Hello everyone and welcome to Sinful Gaming. I hope you're all doing well, I hope you're all staying safe, and most of all, I hope you're all fighting that war against the Grey. Today's video is going to be a little bit of fun. We're going to do a little bit of wish listing, looking at 10 things I'd like to see in Age of Sigmar 3rd edition for the Orruk Warclans. Now we know that the Orruk Warclans have a brand new battle tome coming out in August. Rumours are potentially the start of August, the very first weekend. Orruk Warclans is going to be a really exciting battle tome because of course it includes a brand new allegiance and a brand new set of models for the Cruel Boys. Now, what I want to do today is, as mentioned, we're going to do a little bit of wish listing and a little bit of thought, and I'm mostly going to revolve around the other two parts of the army, mainly because we've seen a lot and we've got rumours of a lot of stuff coming out for the Cruel Boys, so I want to talk about things I'd like to see for the other two major parts of the Orruk Warclan book. Now, I know we've got a book coming out straight away at the start of the edition, but that is by no means a sure thing that it's going to be the only book this edition. I mean, we've had two Slaanesh books and two Lumineth books in the previous edition of Warhammer Age of Sigmar, so I don't see any reason why there couldn't be two books for any particular army in this edition. So with that said, I potentially want to look at the Ironjaws and Bonesplitter parts of the army, but we'll talk a little bit about Cruel Boys as well, maybe potentially. And let's go have a little bit of wish listing fun, talk a little bit about what I'd like to see, and I'd love to hear all your thoughts in the comments below as well. With that said, let's get cracking. This is 10 things I'd like to see in Age of Sigmar 3rd edition for Orruk Warclans. Number 1, don't change anything about the Ironjaws. Now, this isn't to say new models or stuff like that, but I believe the Ironjaws part of the rules, their core fundamental rules, are absolutely perfect. They make the army play exactly how you would want it to. They're fun, they're exciting, they're not a negative play experience, they're fun to play against. I absolutely love playing against Ironjaws armies myself, and I know a lot of people do too. I think this is one of those armies that Games Workshop has really understood well. It's particularly this Ironjaws part of the army. It's so fun to build lists. You can swing so many ways. Points changes allow you to just float between different units and different combos in Ironjaws of what works and what doesn't. You've got these 3 core great units in our boys, Brutes, and your Gore Grunters, and depending on how the game flows and how points change and all that sort of stuff, each one of them has had their time in the sun where they become the good option for a time period at least. Ironjaws are, for me, one of the most perfect allegiances in the game. They're so much fun. I know a ton of people don't want to see anything change to them at all. This allegiance can pretty much stay the way it is. Sub-factions, maybe they could change up a little bit. Maybe give them an actual realm gate as a terrain feature for the army and the particular sub-faction that needs one. But for the vast majority of those core fundamental rules of Ironjaws smashing and bashing and that sort of stuff, don't change it all. They're great. The War Scrolls are great. Everything about Ironjaws at the moment is just great. Number 2, give Bonesplitters more anti-monster abilities. Now, they already have some cool rules that allow them to do some stuff to monsters. In the rules, how you can sacrifice particular models to do the mortal wounds and run up the monsters and stab them and all that sort of stuff. But I really do think in this edition particularly, the Bonesplitters are in a really great place to be a really different and interesting army in the game. Their whole thing is they're good at killing monsters. They don't have any monsters in their sort of standalone faction themselves, and so I think giving them a ton of anti-monster abilities would be really cool. Maybe the ability to ignore monstrous rampage on a bunch of units, or the ability to, instead of doing a monstrous rampage, if they're fighting a monster, they get to do maybe a set of abilities back to them would be a really interesting thing, I think, to see for Bonesplitters, you know. So at the end of the charge phase, monsters do their monstrous reactions, and maybe Bonesplitters have a bunch of reactions they can do to monsters. Would be a really interesting thing to bring to the table for Bonesplitters and definitely give them something of their own unique flavour to the game and make them a really interesting force in the new meta that's going to be happening for Warhammer Age of Sigmar 3rd edition. I think these are the sort of things I want to see from Bonesplitters. I want to see more anti-monster stuff. I want to see them be able to, you know, get +1 to hit against monsters potentially through various means and stuff like that. Just more of this and more of those particular rules they already have, but just sort of dial it up that little bit because monsters are going to be more prevalent in the new edition. Number 3, I'd like to see a change to war points. Now, this is an interesting one because I know war points do work in their current format. They're a really interesting mechanic for the big war army. However, I'd like to see them change a little bit. This is maybe the narrative gamer in me talking a little bit, but what I'd like to see is I'd like to see the effects that trigger WAR points very specific to each separate sort of sub-faction of Orruks. I'd like to see the way you generate WAR points with Ironjaws different to the way you generate WAR points with Kruleboyz, and then in turn different than the way you generate WAR points with Bonesplitters units. I'd like to see each particular unit give you WAR points in a very different way and bring its unique flavour to the Big WAR army by doing so. I want to see the Bonesplitters and that feral savagery and their sort of multitude of models, the numbers game, brought to bear, and that is how they affect the WAR points. I'd also like to see the Ironjaws, particularly the most fighty of all the Orruks, do their own particular thing and generate WAR points, maybe through fighting, whereas the Bonesplitters might be doing it, generating stuff with their priests and wizards, and the Kruleboyz on the same thing, generating WAR points by doing sneaky things. I think this would be a great change to WAR points to encourage you to play with the 3 different parts of the army and get the most out of WAR points, so you don't see maybe pure Ironjaws list in Big WAR or pure Bonesplitter list in Big WAR, but you do see that true mix of the 3 in Big WAR like you really want that to be on the tabletop. Number 4, I'd like to see Ironjaws heroes on different mounts. I don't think there's been any model in the Orruks range more widely requested than an Ironjaws war boss, or mega boss rather, on a Gore Grunter. I think this is a model that a ton of people want, and I can't wait to see this model finally made flesh properly somewhere down the line. Surely this is going to be a thing one day. But on that same turn, I do think we could maybe see other Orruk Warclans heroes, and particularly the Ironjaws heroes, on the various different mounts. Could you imagine maybe the Shaman on the Gore Grunter, or maybe the Shaman even on the Giant Maw Crusher would be quite an amazing thing. I think these different changes to the Ironjaws and just giving them these few extra characters to really allow you to play your Mega Boss in different ways, or even, of course, even your Shamans in different ways, would be really interesting. Number 5, update the Bonesplitters model line. There's quite a few models in the Bonesplitters line that definitely do need an update. While I do think maybe the Savage Orruks don't particularly need an update all that much, neither does sort of the Maniac Boar Boys, I do think we need to get rid of some of the fine cast and metal models that are plaguing the army at the moment. And maybe give an upgrade to that big boss for the Savage Orruks as well, as he's rather tiny comparatively to a bunch of the other Orruk Warclans models. Of course, the main offenders here, I think, maybe a new sort of WAR prophet, the Giant Orc Psyche. You can see here pictured, and, some of the other wizards, the big boss as mentioned. But also think maybe actually getting a box set for Big Stabbers would be a really good thing for the Bonesplitters as well. All these are just give the Bonesplitters a bunch of brand new plastic models. We've seen with the Warhammer Underworld's Warband for Bonesplitters that can make some really fantastic looking Bonesplitters models, and I'd love to see that made across the entire army and update all these kits that definitely need it. Number 6, expand the lore on the man, the myth, the legend that is Godrak. This is the Ironjaw's main protagonist. In fact, this is all of Orruk Warclan's main dude. This is the guy that wants to go and fight Sigmar himself and hit him with his giant axes. Now, near the end of the Broken Realm saga, we got to see a little bit more of Godrak leading his giant war to when he went toe-to-toe with Kragnos for quite some while. This leads us to show how major a player Godrak is in the mortal realms, that he can go toe-to-toe with the apparent new big bad that is Kragnos himself. So what I'd like to see is Godrak's story sort of expanded. What happened to him after this giant fight? What happened to him when he realized, maybe I'm not the strongest and I need to go get stronger so I can beat that giant centaur dude? These are the things I want to know. I want to see Godrak and have him face these trials that maybe he's not had to face before, because he's literally beaten everyone up in his way so far. So I'd love to see how he overcomes these. How does this orc that's not quite all brutal but is quite a bit cunning as well sort of fight his way to the top of the mountain once again and become the predominant destruction man once again. Number 7, I'd like to see a sub-faction that allows coalition units from Gloomspike kits. Now, a major reason I'd like to see this personally is, so I'm an old Wood Elf player, an old Dark Elf player from Warhammer Fantasy, and something that I've found really exciting with the Cities of Sigmar is that I have things like Living City that allow me to play an old Wood Elf army from Fantasy. I can have my Wanderers as my core, and I can bring in Sylvaneth units inside that. Same thing with Hakuron, I can have my Dark Elves and bring in my Daughters of Cain, allowing me to play an old Dark Elf army. This, for me, is a great thing they've been doing with Warhammer Age of Sigmar lately. And of course, we've seen the Coalition updates to bring Beasts of Chaos and the Slaves to Darkness units inside your marked armies of the other gods, Disciples of Zinch, etc. And I think Orruk Warclans could do this really well. Maybe a sub-faction from Big War or Ironjaws, or one of them. Big War probably the preferred way, but one of them that's going to allow Coalition units in from Gloomspike Gits, allowing those old Orcs and Goblins players to crack out those old collections and play with those models in the old army they used to be able to build. This, for me, just creates a new sort of cool looking army on the tabletop, brings those Orcs and Goblins hordes together, and also gives us access to those armies that we read about at the end of Broken Realms, where we had Godrak and Skragrott sort of working together-ish, or, you know, Skragrott sort of following in the wake of Godrak. Those armies will be viable on the table in match play. That's always my want, is to see all these armies that we see in the stories be able to be played in all variations of the game. So I definitely think a sub-faction that will allow Coalition units from Gloomspike Gits would be a great addition to the army, not just allowing people to use those old armies they have, and, you know, there still are people coming back into the game from Warhammer Fantasy now, but also just giving an extra option to an army that has a ton of options already. It'd just be a great way to give some more things to it. Number 8, I'd love to see an Ironjaw's Chariot. Now, those who remember talking about Orcs and Goblins just before, that Orcs used to have the Boar Chariots back in the days in Warhammer Fantasy. I think an updated version of this, pulled by maybe a Gore Grunter or two, would be an amazing looking model to have in the Orruk Warclans army. And it definitely feels like it sort of fits. I mean, we don't want to be adding shooting units to Ironjaws. I really don't think it fits the sort of idea of what Ironjaws are all about. They want to get in and fight. They don't want to be standing back shooting. That's not Ironjaws' way. So I think a Boar Chariot pulled by a couple of massive Gore Grunters, a much bigger chariot than what we've seen before for the Orcs, would be an amazing thing. So definitely something I reckon we could see added to the army would just be awesome. Is this amazing Orruk Warclans Gore Grunter Chariot just be a great addition to the army. Number 9, I'd love to see the Rogue Idol receive a proper model. The Rogue Idol was an amazing piece that Forge World brought out for the Orruk Warclans. This actually came out in the Warhammer Fantasy times before Age of Sigmar was a thing. But for me, it's just a fantastic model. This whole pile of rocks brought to life by the Orcs simply believing that their god would imbue it with magic is an amazing piece for the army. This could be something, you know, maybe priests could do something in the Orruk Warclans army around. Maybe we get some more priests in the Bonesplitters range, turn some of those wizards into priests and have them work like that potentially. It could be a really interesting thing to sort of add to the army. Maybe you can take this in Big War and the War points actually generate, making them do better things, and these become a really massive part of Big War armies, being able to smash all the better as they just get charged up with all this War energy around them. They're just a cool model that I think a lot of Forge World stuff like this I'd like to see transported over into proper plastic for the armies. The Rogue Idol, definitely one of those certain models. Love to see it in the army proper. And last but not least, number 10, I'd like to see a Bonesplitters named character. I don't really care exactly what this model is, whether it's something like a Wargog Prophet or a particular war boss, or, you know, something in between, maybe a bit of both, maybe even a duo. I don't really mind. I just like to see a nice big focal point for the Bonesplitters. We of course know we've got a particular killer boss coming for the new Swamp Boys coming out, the Cruel Boys. And we know we've got Godrak, obviously, that leads the Ironjaws. And I really do think that Bonesplitters would do really well with having one of these particular sort of leader models leading their particular sub-faction. It'd also create a really interesting thing if we could bring all three of these leaders together in a single army in Big War and have something really fun and interesting to do. But also, this just gives pure Bonesplitter armies a major player in their army to be able to bring to the tabletop and feel like their army has a proper place in the realm of Warhammer Age of Sigmar. I think we could really see something interesting here. And for me, I do think Wargog Prophet is probably the way to go with this. Give us a named wizard, because obviously we've got sort of Godrak, which is our big fighty one. We've got this more sneaky killer boss on the giant crocodilian monster that we're seeing for Cruel Boys come out. And I think a wizard one would just fit in well. A named wizard character would be awesome to see for the Bonesplitters. And so that's my 10 thoughts on things I'd like to see for Orruk Warclans. I'd love to know what you'd like to all see for Orruk Warclans. Let us know in the comments below all your thoughts, your ideas, and what you'd like to see, what you wouldn't like to see changed in particular. So let us know. Well, thank you all for watching the video. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you have not already. Also, while you're at it, why not come chat more with us on Discord? We've got a link in the description of the video below to our Discord server. You can come chat with me and other members of our fine little community here at Sinful Gaming. Lastly, we'd like to give a shout out to everyone who helps support the channel in various different ways. First of all, to our Patreon members, Christian Weir, James Soren, Chaos Spawn, AJC, Kenny Lowe, Outer and Shot First, James Crowder, Andrew Bowen, Nathan Fee, Tim Newman, The Rising Ape, Cure Dynamic, Agu, Anthony B, MJ, and Dyna226. Thank you to, as well, our YouTube members, Green Roots Gaming, Fire Titan, Steve T, The Real Zeop, Chris Wallace, Turriot12, Vinny, and Lock Lorick. And a special thanks to our artist who does all the channel art for us, Lady Witchfox Art, thank you very much. And to our Discord moderator, Xmorphic, you do a fantastic job on Discord for us as well. Thank you all, everyone, for watching. If you'd like to help support on Patreon or YouTube member or help support the channel in another way, you can do so by following one of the links in the description of the video to Patreon or YouTube members, or go buy some Sinful Gaming merch from our Teespring store, also linked in the video's description. That's it for today, everyone. Thank you again. Stay safe, stay well, and most of all, keep fighting that war against the Grey. Ciao for now.